Welcome back, warriors, to the worst fighting game, my never-ending quest to crown the king of the crap when it comes to good old button bashers. While our last few episodes dipped back into the 16-bit era, it's time for me to drag you all the way kicking and screaming forward into the early age of 3D fighters on one of its most prolific platforms,
the Sony PlayStation.
Breathe it in, folks. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. I'm digging open the grave to unearth Killing Zone, an often forgotten fighter that, while I'm sure most of you have forgotten, will immediately recognize its box art. Yeah, you can just picture this one lying on the shelf of your local Blockbuster, lying untouched and unrented. Yet, as so often is the case, Killing Zone actually has a neat little history behind it and its developer, Scarab. If you've never heard of Scarab, I'm not surprised, but if you run in the circles of janky fighting games, aka poverty, you'll know them intimately. The first game they ever developed was the baffling, incredible, and memorable Survival Arts, one of the earliest examples of Japan doing the whole Mortal Kombat digitization thing, and man, were the results insane. Their next game built off what they had learned there, but somehow was even more bonkers. Battle Monsters, which got a release in the US on the Saturn, is a regular request for the worst fighting game, and I have to say, y'all are tripping the fuck out. This game is so crazy, unique, and admirable because it very proudly doesn't give a fuck. A bizarre supernatural hodgepodge that also features actors dressed up in costume, but taken to the next level of insanity and creativity, not to mention multi-tiered arenas and all other manner of depravity. If you're hoping I'll take a look at Battle Monsters on this show, well, keep hoping. I think it's a work of goddamn art.
So if we were going to put this in an auction today, I would suggest an estimate of $200,000 to $300,000.
And while it was released in 1995, and as you can see is very 2D, three-dimensional gaming was fast overtaking the entire industry, so Scarab jumped on nice and early the very next year with Killing Zone, landing on the PlayStation not even a year into its North American launch. Sony's machine was home to a lot of random fighters, and just as Street Fighter II spawned dozens of imitators, so too was everyone trying to make their own Tekken or Virtua Fighter, and this was Scarab's attempt. Unfortunately, their bizarre sensibilities had to be scaled back a bit to make for the many concessions that polygons demanded. In magazine previews of Killing Zone, most notably Next Generation, it seems there were a few features that never made it into the final game, which is no doubt due to limited time or maybe even some issues with rating systems. While published by Naxatsoft in Japan, it was Acclaim that were the ones tasked with distributing Killing Zone throughout the rest of the world, and it's with them where a little bit of drama might have surfaced.
The most important thing for me is drama.
Acclaim had been cut out of publishing home versions of Mortal Kombat by this time, so it wouldn't surprise me if they started publishing any other gory fighter in an attempt to make up for it. Next Generation magazine said that Killing Zone was going to be far more violent, including, but not limited to, the ability to dismember your opponents mid-fight. It wasn't in the build that they had played, but they were told by an Acclaim rep it would be in the final version. As we can see, however, when it did release, it was decidedly a teen-rated affair. Now, what could have happened here is that Acclaim had spoken to Naxatsoft and Scarab about making the game more violent to pander to that edgy late 90s dude, but because Japan has strict rules on depicting dismemberments and the like in video games, they declined to do so. Now, it's possible they could have developed two distinct versions of the game, one with gore and one without, but I'm sure Acclaim weren't looking to foot an extra bill, so ironically, the ability to chop up your enemies was chopped out. The second thing was that Killing Zone, for a time, was going to have an extra character. It's not clear if it was going to be a default member of this menagerie of monsters or an end boss, but Next Generation clearly stated that a Cyclops was going to be joining the fray. Now, judging from the rest of the roster, I assume the character was going to look like...
Come on!
No, just no. Oh, okay, yeah, that's better. Now, a boss does seem to make the most sense because, well, Killing Zone actually lacks a final... Wait, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself because it's time to talk about the... This is not going to be the longest section. Now, despite Scarab's older fighters having very unique aesthetics, the presentation here is shockingly bare bones. It's early 3D at its most early. Low poly models, not much going on in terms of art style, and basic arenas that definitely are not pushing the PlayStation hardware. In fact, despite this game being from 1996, they barely look any better or more complex than those seen in Virtua Fighter 1. This is disappointing because Scarab crafted some crazy looking shit in the past. The characters are plucked all over from myth and legend, and while there's some crossover with battle monsters, the roster here is unfortunately much less battle monstery. Starting off, we have Gush the werewolf, who predates Yugo by more than a year. Cal the happy skeleton, man, I can't get enough of this guy. Rem the mummy, always nice to see some mummies alive representation. Batch the minotaur, what the hell is up with these names? Renner the gorgon, could you not have just called her Medusa? Were you scared that her estate or descendants were gonna sue you? Sherry the dark fairy, who honestly just looks like a cosplayer. And finally, we have Frankenstein's monster, Drake.
I only love my bed and my mom, I'm sorry.
So that's 7 fighters, which, while I get this was the studio's first 3D game, is pretty stingy in 1996. I mean, hell, even Criticom had like 8 characters. They do try to vary this up a bit with 2P or alternate versions of each character, complete with a different costume and even name, although sadly, no gameplay differences. It's really disappointing they couldn't get that Cyclops in there. I mean, stop it! No! What's even more disappointing than that is that the game lacks endings, like it has 0. The final fight is always a mirror, and then it sums up how you did in each match, counting up all your hits, your life total, and how long it took you. Thanks for all the useless stats that nobody wanted?
The numbers, basically. What do they mean?
Would it have killed them to just have one paragraph and some art for each character? Again, at least Criticom had like dumb movies and shit. Fortunately, I can forgive all of that because of the sound. And when I say sound, I mean...
Reach you up!
That's just the best. It's just the best. At first, you think it's Batch or whoever talking shit, but no, it's the announcer, and it's the greatest thing of all time. If there were a bunch of dumb English one-liners instead of just the one, Killing Zone would be much more famous today. And if Acclaim couldn't convince Scarab about the gore, then they should have doubled the fuck down on this. Honestly, there's not much else to say in terms of presentation. The character models are passable, but they lack a certain je ne sais quoi, and since there's no endings, gore, or even an intro, it's the presentation where Killing Zone really lets me down the most. Yeah, I didn't stutter. Alright, don't get me wrong though, Killing Zone is incredibly basic when it comes to modes and mechanics. There's the options mode, which looks like this. Man, that's weird. And then there's auto mode, which is a bizarre, almost Monster Rancher style thing where your character kind of levels up and gets stronger. You can then pit them against other stronger versions of the cast. This doesn't actually do shit. You don't get any unlockables, endings, or anything really. Just some silly bonus mode that Scarab thought would be a big selling point, I guess? Man, I would have really loved a dungeon crawling minigame like in Tobal or even Guys. Okay, just cue the noise, get it over with. No, don't play that noise! So yeah, that's it in terms of modes. Mechanics though, that's where things really get not very interesting. You have a few special moves, there's some grabs, a wake-up game, you can dash, and that's pretty much it. There is, though, an OTG stomp that opens things up a little bit, giving Killing Zone more of a passing resemblance to Virtua Fighter. Now, while on the ground, things are pretty slow, it's in the air where... God damn! Yeah, for whatever reason, jumps are always at an 11. They're incredibly fast and cover a lot of distance, making them actually pretty fun. In fact, most of the special moves, when used in conjunction with some normals, lead to a lot of combo and juggling opportunities. Now, while there's no official combo counter, you don't need to be expressly told that this game can be hype. Just know that it can be. Once you start experimenting, you can wind up finding some pretty fun stuff. It's not bloody roar fun or Toshinden fun, it's, Killing Zone fun. Now, would the game be improved immeasurably if there were super attacks? Yes. Would gore and dismemberments have made sense considering the source material? Also yes. Would stages filled with big stupid hazards like in Mace the Dark Age have been more fun? Yes! Ugh, it's just so frustrating. It just makes me want to get up and scream,
Beat you up!
Whew, okay, anyway. While the game systems are basic, there's a weird, so bad it's good style quality to them, and once you start finding whack combos and dank juggles, it starts to click, especially if you main my boy, Cal. Look at that, just look at it! This is one of the greatest special moves I've seen in a long time. This one singular special is enough by itself to automatically make Killing Zone not the worst thing I've ever played. Jeez, I need like some type of skeleton scientist to take a look at this.
As a certified expert on all things video game skeleton, a Boney, you can't top that!
I hinted at this earlier, but Killing Zone feels weird. The general movement of all these monstars is pretty slow, but the dashes are quite fast. The dodges also feel really choppy, but they are effective. The whole thing makes for an odd brew, almost as if Scarab had no idea what they were doing. Fortunately though, when you actually hit your opponents or land a throw or a combo, it has good feedback. It just makes me want to pop off and yell, "Beat you up!" I can't overstate just how important that is, because while Shaq Fu or Balls have much more interesting mechanics, they feel like you're playing a jar of moldy mayo rotting out in the sun that has a controller plugged in. Look, I know this might all seem crazy. Killing Zone is often cited as one of the worst fighters on the PlayStation, and at the time it was released, which was alongside Tekken 2, it probably was, or somewhere thereabouts. Going back to it though, it hasn't aged as badly as everyone in the world would probably assume, only just a little bit. Believe me, no one's more shocked than me. Look, you throw a big dumb boss on there, add back the gore, actual endings, and way more
Beat you up!
and you would have the makings for a trashy but entertaining fighter. But poor reviews and even poorer sales is what sealed Killing Zone's fate in most people's eyes, and honestly, that's fair. Fortunately, that was not the end of Scarab, not by a long shot. While they clearly attempted to emulate Virtua Fighter, they actually wound up working on that franchise in a roundabout way. Their next release, another Saturn exclusive, was Zen Nihon Pro Wrestling featuring Virtua, which, if the title didn't clue you in, featured both Wolf Hockfield and Jeffrey McWild. After that, they moved on to porting AM2's Fighting Vipers sequel onto the Dreamcast. God, I miss Fighting Vipers. After that, though, they unfortunately did close their doors, which is something I would be saying to you if they weren't bought by Cavia and changed their name to Feel Plus. Yes, that Feel Plus, who co-developed Lost Odyssey with Mistwalker and were the main devs behind Ju-On the Grudge and Mind Jack. Ah, yeah! I am legit so happy for them. They made it! Kinda. Now, as to where Killing Zone lands on the tier list, well, it's a tricky one. Its presentation is incredibly lackluster, its mechanics and modes only marginally better than that, and its game feel could still use some work. But altogether, the waft I'm smelling from this zone is fairly stinky. If it had more Mace the Dark Age injected into it, I'd be more than willing to actually upgrade it to that'll be just fine, if I'm being completely honest. So, there you have it, Warriors. If you told me a few years ago I'd be doing a show where Killing Zone is one of the better games I'd have played, I would have called you a liar, turned into a giant skull, and yelled,
Beat you up!
Want to nominate another bad fighter for my next challenger? Let me know in the comments below, over on my Twitter, or enter the Sacred Fighting Temple, that is the Flophouse VIP Patreon, where I'll duke it out next time on The Worst Fighting Game.